class and then all that stuff.
Okay. My name is Jalen Harris. I'm 23 years old. I go to West Point, class of 2016.
Where are you from?
I'm from Austin, Texas.
Born and raised?
Born in El Paso, and I grew up in Austin, Texas.
Okay, awesome. And can you give like a little timeline of like where, when, or like I guess like when you moved to Austin and then that transition? How old were you? How did that impact? I guess like your identity for who you were.
How old are you in the fourth grade?
Wait, what? Sorry.
How old are you in the fourth grade?
Like how? I don't know. I'm trying to think. Like, okay, so how old were you when you moved from El Paso to Austin?
Well, I don't know how old I was. I know what grade I was in.
Okay, what grade were you in?
Okay, so I was born in El Paso, and I started elementary school there. And then in the fourth grade, my dad got a new job in the military, and we moved to Austin because his new post was at Fort Hood in Austin. And then since then, I started fifth grade and finished high school in Austin, Texas.
Okay, awesome. And then, can you talk about how you identify, like ethnically or racially? Like identify as like African American or Black or Afro Latino, whatever.
I mean, I grew up, well, in Austin because that's mainly where I remember. My best friend's white, but playing sports, I hung out with a lot of black people. But I also hung out with Hispanics as well. So there wasn't really like a dominant ethnicity that I was around all the time. It was pretty mixed.
Okay. And then your parents? What are your parents' racial identities?
My dad is African American and my mom is Mexican, but we also have Spaniard in us. It's like I think it's like 25% or something. So.
Perfect. So then, how do you identify? Like, would you consider yourself a black man? Like, if someone asked you, like on a census or something, how do you identify?
Yeah, I think I'm more of a black. I fit more of the black person, and that's what other people see me as if they just look at me.
Perfect. Okay, so then what does it mean to be black to you?
What does it mean to be black?
You can like take a couple minutes or like a couple of seconds to like think about it because we can edit all this out, obviously.
Okay. I think what it means to be black is to have touch or like bases with your roots. A lot of culture that goes on that you don't see in a lot of other ethnicities. And one thing, for example, is family reunions. And I was talking with this to my friend the other day, who's a white person. And the type of like reunion that you see in a black family is a lot different than you would see in a white person's family. And I think just how close the families are, and I think that goes a long way. So yeah.
Awesome. Let's see. Can you recall a moment where you first realized you were black and that other people saw you as?
So in El Paso, it's nothing but Mexicans, and I'm like the only like darker skinned person, I guess. And so, at a really young age, I knew I was a little different, but yeah.
Did you get treated differently because of that? Like, did anybody ever say that when you're in school that Jalen's black, or would they like make, I don't know, would they make like references to you, or did you ever notice any of that?
No, I was never like pointed out for being black or like a biracial kid.
Right.
Because I've always lived in a place where it's very diverse, so I don't think that was ever a problem for me.
That's really interesting. Okay, so what do you believe are the advantages and disadvantages of being black for you, just like in your experience? And then I want you to talk about, like, let's say like someone who doesn't look as like racially ambiguous, like someone who's like maybe like darker skin or something like that, what do you think the advantages or disadvantages of that could be? So talk about your experience first, and then we'll move on to that.
So I think the advantages of being black, and we can talk about like going into college or whatever. Like you obviously have more sources of um, financial help, to get to college just because you're black. Um, I mean, that's really all I can think of.
How
Some
about disadvantages?
disadvantages could be the same thing. Trying to get into school, but it's not a very diverse school, so they're not really going to look at you, or even getting a job, which I have had a problem before. And then like especially like the older like successful people, they're predominantly white just because of history, and so I guess trying to get a job or trying to go up in the or I'm talking about like trying to get higher in where you're from, that could be difficult. And what was the other question?
And then what are the advantages of you and like your blackness, or like how you talked about like in school how like no one really ever pointed that out. You weren't like the center of attention,
Yeah.
because no one, you weren't like in a school with a bunch of white kids, and if you were, that would have probably looked different. So like I guess I'm not gonna like put words in your mouth, but like so far from what you've said is that like one of the advantages of being black and like biracial in a non-white space made you not really have to think about your identity in like a hard way.
And then going off of that, a downfall would be like, I guess, going to a place like this where it's predominantly white and you're not really used to dealing with, I guess, the issues that like that are actually a big deal in like in where we live in the country. So that was kind of a new taste or a new feel. And then I guess like, and this is kind of within the black culture, it's easier for me to, I guess, I don't know if sympathize is the right word, but I guess like associate with white people because I'm more fair in skin, whereas like a darker person or a full black person may have a harder time or maybe judge more. So I think like that's an issue like within like black people itself.
Yeah, so true. Okay, so then I'm trying to think. All right, so could you describe the portrayal of black men in the media as you've seen it throughout your life? Is there truth in it, in the way that black men are portrayed? Why or why not?
So, I mean, predominantly it's sports and the entertainment business. And I think, like, obviously it's, like, changing, like, quickly, but there is truth in it because, I mean, that's what the world portrays us as. Like, they see us as athletes. They see us as, musicians, artists, or whatever. But, I mean, now, like, you can see there's a lot more black people that are breaking that barrier. Like, President Obama, like, he's black, and he's the president of our country. Then there's other, like, political figures that are rising. So you're seeing, like I said, you're seeing black people break that barrier.
And then those are really all the questions that I had, but I kind of want to know how you being in like a predominantly white space, I want you to kind of expand on that a little bit more. Like what are can you think of anything that's happened maybe like not necessarily like recently, but in the whole time that you've been at West Point where like you've realized that there was this sort of like distance between you and your white peers? Like were there inherent things that you noticed? Maybe it was like your like Austin or like or Texas identity, because I know like Gio and I talk about them all the time. Like regionally, like we're just different among a lot of other things, right? But like there has to be something. Like I know that you believe you connect at a certain level with a lot of the white students there, but I think that there's like when do you not connect with them?
Here's an example, like just maybe 2 weeks ago, where this white girl, she were having like a conversation casually, and then I think it was during like February, so it was Black History Month, and she tells me that I'm not African American and that I'm just American. And I'm just like, oh, uh, one, like how you gonna tell me like where I come from and tell me like that I can't associate with my background and my heritage, and yeah, I pretty much left it at that because I wasn't trying to get in a big debate. And then she was like, "Well, and I was like, if you don't want to call me African American, then don't. You can call me black. That's acceptable as well." And she's like, "But I feel like that's derogatory and yada yada yada." So it was just hard for me to like really like I guess see that from her because I like to see things from other people's perspectives, you know. But it was really hard for me to like understand where she was coming from because it didn't make any sense to me.
And then also, it doesn't go both ways. Like, no one's gonna ever ask her,
Yeah,
like, so you're not Irish American, right? You're like, you're just American,
yeah,
or like,
like
that doesn't go
I
both
would
ways.
never
Like,
question like another person's background, you know.
right?
One, I
Exactly.
have like no like place in that, you know. And I like I told her my birth certificate says African American and Hispanic,
Yeah.
like so like that alone tells you that I'm already identified as African American. But she like not I mean that's not the issue with just her. Obviously, it's a bigger issue. But like people are trying to strip away like a black man's identity, you know. And there's so much history in that identity too, and we like it's so much that you just don't want to lose it, you know, because we're not getting that in school, you know. We're not growing up like you're not gonna hear about like you know, we can talk about Mexicans too. You're not gonna hear about you know like African history or Mexican history. You're gonna hear about how the white person conquered the Africans, conquered the Mexicans, you know, like so they're trying to strip away what we have to hold on to our past and our history. And so I think I mean, that's what I've, being here, that's what I've like learned. Because, I mean, where I come from, Austin, it's very diverse. Like, you can go on 6th Street, one street full of bars, you see all types of people, like literally everybody. But you can go up here and, like, that completely just blew my mind. Um, but yeah, that was one example. I can go on, but
That was perfect. I'm trying to think. I think we have everything that I need from the questions. So, okay, since like after the interview, I want to ask you one more time to see if the answer that you gave before changed a little bit. But what does it mean to be black?
I mean,
It mean
having,
like a million things. I know that
ha-
it's purposely like so
yeah,
vague.
I
Like,
mean, having history, like staying in touch with the roots, um, you know, understanding it, and living. I mean, I wouldn't say living by it, but you know, supporting it, and yeah, just yeah.
okay, Jalen.